Mr. Johnson, we'll start with you on this question. How would you handle the Syrian refugee situation in Utah?
Syrian refugee situation. So, look, I think I understand the plight of refugees in a uniquely personal way. When I was a boy, my aunt and uncle went down to Camp Pendleton near San Diego, and they adopted 3 Vietnamese refugee orphan children. So my cousins, Annie, David, and Amy Tron, are Vietnamese refugees. And I've seen how they've been blessed by the goodness and the generosity of America. I've also seen how they have and they do contribute to American society. So the refugee plight is real. My concern with Syrian refugees is that we don't know if terrorists are coming in under the guise of refugee status. Many of the refugees are single, military-aged males. Since we've been bringing refugees in, we've found a handful throughout the United States that have been terrorists. I'm all for helping. I believe in the Good Samaritan rule. But until we can be assured that those that we're inviting to come to our state aren't terrorists, we should be saying no to Syrian refugees.
The day I was elected senator, it was a landslide. I won by 6 votes. And I got a call from my uncle, who was 91 at the time, and subsequently passed away. He said, "Well, now you're a hotshot big senator. And let me tell you something. I thought this was going to be a celebration, high-five call, right?" He said, "You get there wherever you're voting, you remember one thing. You remember your grandparents." He said, "They came over from Greece. They didn't have enough money to go to the parts of the ship where you could see light. They spent weeks coming here. They never owned a home. Neither of them ever earned a dime more than minimum wage. They never had a car. They worked and worked and worked, barely spoke English. And why did they do that? They knew their life was not going to be good. They did that for you. They did it for us. And they made that sacrifice. So when you vote, when you look at issues, you think about your grandparents. And that's the way you need to see the world. There's plenty of people that are going to see the world for lobbyist eyes and through the cash rolling in and through special interests. You look at issues from your grandparents' perspective. And when I see those Syrians, and I see those families, and I had 4 of them in my home at Christmas time, I don't see terrorists. I see my grandparents. I see it in their eyes. I see their ambition. I see their courage. I see their strength. I see their energy for America. I'm not afraid of them. I'm proud of them. It's a sad moment that we are afraid to embrace these people that have been the strength of our country. They are us. We have a great system for making sure terrorists don't get in. We ought to rise to the challenge, not go down to the lowest level. Let them in.
Senator, this question goes to you first. Our schools are not currently funded well. How will you ensure a brighter educational future for our children?
Thank you. Good question. Who asked that? Can't ask that. I just introduced a bill. You know what happened to Utah education along the way to grading to where we are? Do you know what happened? We stopped funding it. And you know how we did it? Because those greedy special interests came rolling in. Until 1996, every dime of state income tax went to K through 12 education. Every dime of it. Our inspired founding fathers who wrote the Constitution said, money goes from state income tax to education. And then guess what happened? A lot of other greedy people decided, we're going to get our hands in there. Too much is going to K through 12. They changed the Constitution. And now that has allowed, indirectly, billions of dollars to go to transportation. You know how much is missing from this little guy's school now? $950 million that should have been in our education, K through 12 system, has been railroaded off to transportation and other places as a result of that constitutional change. It ought not to have happened. Our children are suffering. 2000 and 2010, guess what happened? We're one of 3 states whose high school graduation rate actually declined by 6%. The biggest classrooms in America by 6 children. Our kids are not competitive. Too many administrators, you say. Guess who's the lowest rate for administrators? Utah. Fewer principals, fewer nurses, fewer counselors, and declining dramatic test scores. High church, LDS church official said to me the other day, Senator, what are you going to do? We know which children are from Utah in our language training schools because they do the worst. We're not going to attract the kind of jobs that Jonathan has because we are not paying the price to educate our kids. That is our priority, and it ought to be, or we're not going to be competitive. We need to change the Constitution.
Education is the most important thing that we fund as a state. There's no question about it. And I think when we earmark education funds to go someplace they shouldn't have gone, we're stealing from our children. That's wrong. There's no silver bullet, no one thing that will fix education, but there are principles that will. We need to make our education more personalized to our children, and we need to make it more localized, so that not Washington, D.C., not the State Board of Education, but local school districts and principals have more say over how they spend money, how they hire teachers, how they retain them, how they train them, how they reward them. One thing that I would specifically do to help our teachers in Utah is to make sure that they're not spending as much money as they are out of pocket for unreimbursed classroom school supplies. The Utah State Office of Education did this year a study, and they said the average school teacher in Utah spends $425 out of pocket, unreimbursed, post-tax dollars for school supplies. We cannot balance the budget on the backs of our poorly paid school teachers. I would work with the legislature to provide at least a $425 voucher that every school teacher can access to get classroom school supplies. You know, when I tell people that number, $425, every school teacher nods their head yes. And every spouse of every school teacher says it's a lot more than that. We need to get money into the classroom. Whether we need to increase our spending or not, I don't know. But we need more of the money to be in the classroom where students are taught.
Mr. Johnson, we'll start with you on this question. Would you support criminal justice reform, specifically dealing with prison overpopulation?
Prison justice reform is important. Right now, we have so many minor crimes where people get incarcerated for long periods of time. We take someone who's a minor offender, and we basically give them a PhD in how to be a criminal. That's what they learn in the prison system. There are a lot of crimes that we could treat more like traffic offenses. If I'm caught speeding or running a stop sign, I get a ticket and I pay a fine. And if I do it too many times, too frequently, I lose my license. And if I drive without my license, then I go to jail. There are a lot of minor crimes that we treat with major penalties. We need to back off of that. Our prison system should punish serious criminals and work to rehabilitate them. But minor criminals, we ought to work to rehabilitate from the beginning rather than teaching them how to be master criminals.
I agree 100%, Jonathan. You're absolutely right. big problems we need to face in our criminal justice system, more than 50% of the people are there because of drugs or alcohol. And guess what? We have no money for treatment. So the normal bump along the way would be grab people early, get them into treatment, do whatever is necessary, not throw them into a prison system that ends up costing us $28,000, $29,000, $30,000 a year. But guess what? We have drug courts that have been really successful, but there's no money. If we had Medicaid expansion, every drug court referral would be funded. Every single one. According to Justice Durant, the Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court, we need to stop playing ideological games and live in a world of slogans and get up and roll up our sleeves, as Utahns have always done, and look at every situation and solve our problems. And that begins in our prisons with dealing with the fact that too many of our young people are getting involved in heroin, for goodness sakes, and in so many drugs. That's a multi-approach is necessary, but one thing we know kind of doesn't work, because we've been trying it since the early 80s, and that is hiring a lot more policemen and throwing them into jail. There are young people. We need to figure out what the problem is and stop it. And I don't think the solution is, and I agree with Jonathan, is just slapping people into jail for these kind of drug offenses. We gotta look at our souls, and we gotta help people. Thank you.
Senator Dabakis, the next question submitted says, it looks like there will be $560 million in excess tax receipts in the current fiscal year. Shouldn't Utah be lowering taxes? If not, how should Utah spend this over $500 million excess?
Well, depends how you do the math. I mean, I see those legislative numbers come and go, but for me that's an easy answer. We are so far behind in education. We seem to think somehow that we have lost this obligation to educate our children. I hear people say all the time, well, we have more kids, as if somehow that relieves us of this responsibility. Yeah, we got them. Well, can't feed them all. We have that responsibility, and it costs money. It costs money. And we can't just say, well, let's stick in some ideology here. Do you want a great state? Do you want to compete with the Chinese? We have two ways to do it. And this is the major flaw of the Herbert administration. It's none of the things we've talked about. It is that for average Utahns now, life is much harder economically. He loves to tout all of the great jobs he's brought here and the low unemployment rate. But what he doesn't tell you is it's filled with $10 an hour jobs. $10 an hour jobs. There should be no fist pumping at $10 an hour jobs. It just doesn't allow a family to exist on $10 an hour jobs. I am tired of competing with Alabama and Mississippi and Tennessee and going, woo, 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 we got a new call center of $10 an hour jobs. Who cares? Governor, compete with Massachusetts. Compete with states that are creating $30 and $40 an hour jobs. That's the key to survival and prosperity for Utah. It's not competing with Mississippi and Alabama. It is creating jobs like Adobe that are $75,000 plus benefits. But that means we got to have kids that are prepared and ready and standing there, not to answer call center jobs, but that can be there at Adobe and have the smarts to do that. That means we got to invest this money in education, not give everybody $20 back. Thank you.
Let me comment on something the senator said before I get to answering the specific question about what to do with the excess tax receipts. We're good at creating jobs in Utah. We're not as good at creating careers in Utah. That's what we need to be focused on. If you look at what we've done at Overstock, from a small startup with 18 people to now nearly 2,000 employees, many of our employees started with what I would call jobs, working in our call center, working in our warehouse, but have developed careers, our accountants, our marketing. Our president, a very capable woman, started in our call center. We need to create careers in Utah, not just jobs. Let's talk about the excess tax receipts. I agree we should put that money to education. Frankly, the money that we get from the federal government with all the strings attached on it that go into education is just half of what this year's surplus is. We could say, put that money into education, put it all in, turn off our reliance on the federal government, and we'd be ahead by $300 million, and we'd have no strings attached. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. But we also need to figure out how to make our dollars stretch. Last year, Governor Herbert signed into law 3 new tax increases. Enough is enough. It bothers me that so many politicians consider our tax payments to them as revenue. Revenue is when you come to the Overstock site, purchase a pair of sheets for $100. You get sheets, I get revenue. Tax dollars are what the government makes us pay. We need to stretch those dollars. We need to be more efficient and more lean in government. That's what Overstock's done in building its business. Those are principles that I'll bring to state government.
Mr. Johnson, what would be your #1 priority as governor?
Look, the #1 priority as governor is no different than what the senator's been talking about. It's improving our K-12 education system. A great K-12 education system is vital to Utah. When I think about where the government touches my family the most, it's schools. I have 5 children. All of them have gone to or are still going to public schools. The government touches their lives and my life every day through education. We need to have world-class education. We need to make sure that our principals have more control. Today, so much comes top down from the federal government, and then top down from Salt Lake and the Utah State Office of Education. It should be local community councils with parents and teachers and principals making decisions. There's no silver bullet to fix education, but there are principles that apply. Localization, personalization. How about we get our 3rd grade kids to read at 3rd grade level? Study after study after study has said, if you don't read at grade level by third grade, chances of success are poor. But if you read at 3rd grade level, by 3rd grade, chances of success are significant. Let's assess all of our kids in 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade. Develop an individualized reading plan for them, and then get reading aids, people in grades 1 through 3, to make sure that every 3rd grader is reading at grade level. There's an old adage. We learn to read so we can read to learn. If our kids can't read by the 3rd grade, they're going to have a really tough time learning.
So this is a bit of a pretend game because I'm not running for governor. I doubt I'm going to be elected, but let's just go there for a minute.
Thank you for pretending.
He's a terrific guy, isn't he? I'm passionate about education. I'm passionate about the public land. I'm passionate about clean air, which we haven't talked about. But the single biggest issue, if I were governor, I'll tell you a story. I'm an art dealer professionally, and there was a big company, that I won't say the name of, that was thinking of putting a 1,000-person software company here in Utah, near the point of the mountain. It begins with an A, but I won't say what it is. And the chairman and founder is a friend of mine who had, we were just friends, he and Marva, who I won't say the name of. So he said, you know, there's problems. There's problems because the people in Silicon Valley, we got to transfer a bunch of them here, and they think if we're moving to Utah County, they're going to be transferred to the compound, and they won't go. And I said, well, I'm happy to go and talk and tell everybody, here's one big gay senator who loves the people in Utah County, who loves the people in Utah. If I were governor, I would leave education to somebody, it would hurt my heart. I would leave air pollution to somebody else, it would hurt my heart. I would manage those out, and I would be doing one thing. I would be flying every morning to corporations that even had the whiff of $75,000 an hour jobs. And I would stand outside of their doors until they saw me. And I would wait in line, and I wouldn't have an entourage, and I would say, hi, I'm Jim Dabakis, I'm the governor of Utah, and I'm here, and we'll make a deal. We'll do whatever you need. We want your jobs. We will do it. We'll bring them home to Utah. That's what I would do, because we bring those jobs, everything else follows. Those good jobs, those jobs that are going to build a future for the next generations. That's what the governor needs to do.
Senator Backus, the next question.
I'm just waiting outside CEOs mentally.
I was going to say, welcome to the compound. What do you think of the resolution to be voted on tomorrow at the Utah County Republican Party Central Committee meeting regarding freeing Utah education from federal control by turning down federal money for education?
Okay, let me ask you guys. We're in Utah County. This is where ideology meets the real road. Yeah, we're going to send a message to Washington. There was a bill, I'm on the Education Committee, and I won't say who sponsored it, because he's a friend of mine. This bill said, we're getting too damn much money from the federal government for children nutrition programs. $34 million a year. Let's send a message to Washington. We're not taking any more children nutrition programs. That'll teach them. And I said, Senator, where could this come from? I mean, these are breakfast and lunch programs for 3rd and 4th graders who are hungry. Imagine you're a 3rd or 4th grader, and that child is sitting in class, and all they can think about is the fact that they're hungry. And what do we give them? We give them lectures about self-reliance, and what would Thomas Jefferson say, and what about the pain papers? Give me a break. There is a place, and we need independence. But ideological answers don't feed the stomach of hungry children who can't learn if they're hungry. And for me, it's just craziness to say, send that money back to Washington. You know what? Let's spend all the damn money we can get from Washington, and let's figure out how to get ourselves in a position where we're not 50th in the country. And the idea of turning back money for breakfast and lunch for children because it's going to run well for delegates, that shows no soul. And, you know, in America, we're all about here. We're all about Jonathan, and we're all about Mitt Romney's, and we're all about the good part and being the smartest guys and making the deal that's built our great country. But we also have a soul, and we can't forget that. If we lose that, we lose everything.
In answering this question, I think the important thing to consider is when we take that money, what strings are attached. When we look at our education budget in Utah, it's about $4 billion. It's a big number. When we look at the money that comes from the federal government for education, it's about $282 million. It's a big number, but it's not nearly as big. It's about half of what our current surplus is. And what strings are attached to that? extra testing, adopting Common Core. There are all kinds of strings. Having the Department of Education being able to veto what we as Utahns want to teach in our classes. I don't want to turn down lunch money for Title I students. I don't want to turn down special ed money. But if the strings attached are too onerous, what we have done is we have sold our education birthright for a mess of federal funding pottage. If we're going to accept federal dollars, we have to find a way to do it without strings attached that are unacceptable to us. So would I turn it all off now? No, but I'd find ways to unattach the strings or then turn it off.
Mr. Johnson, Utah has adopted the Common Core standards and tests. Do you support Common Core?
The short answer is no, I do not support Common Core. Plain and simple. But just like I don't like some national group or the federal government telling states what to do, I don't like the Utah State Office of Education telling districts what to do. What I would love to see, and by the way, I like standards, and I like testing and measuring things. To be anti-Common Core is not anti-standards. I believe in the adage, that which we measure improves, and that which we measure and report improves remarkably. But the State Office of Education, which under the Utah Constitution has the mandate to provide general oversight over education, ought to pick a menu of standards and tests that help us measure ourselves nationally against other states and intrastate, district to district. And then let the school districts, where parents have more involvement, where community councils are involved, let them pick what standards to adopt. If some school districts pick the Common Core, that's their choice. If some pick the Ames, Iowa test, or the Stanford test, or the Massachusetts test, that's their prerogative. But let's not take a one-size-fits-all measurement that isn't Utah-based and adopt it in Utah.
So the Common Core didn't start in the federal government. The Common Core started with the National Governors Association. That's where it started. So what is it? Why did we come to this darn Common Core? Frankly, I don't think it's that big a deal. It's just not. Common Core, not Common Core. Utah's problem. We're spending hours and hours debating that in the Senate when our children are short $950 million a year, and we're talking about should we have this test or not. All right, let me make the best case I can for it. Before Common Core, we had 43 states that were claiming to be in the top 5 in education. And every governor was saying, whoa, we're leading the way. Look at these test results. And they were tricking parents, and they were tricking children, they were tricking the future. So as the governors met together, they said, you know what? Let's have one damn test. There'll be no cheating. Every kid will take it, and then we'll know. Some state is going to have to be 50th and some first. It's one test, and it's on a certain set of principles, and let's see if we can find out how our state ranks with the other states. That's where it came from. Dump it, don't dump it. It is not a significant issue. What it is it's a side game that politicians want to keep you talking about and worked up about, so you're not focusing on the real issue, which is our children are not getting a good education. Don't be distracted like the Wizard of Oz by the little Common Core fiasco that's going on there. Who cares one way or another? Care about, are our children getting a good education, and are they getting the money to compete with other states? As long as you're all worked up about Common Core, and I get worked up about it too, we're not looking at the focus core issue, which is our children are not Utah, our children are not competing. That's what they need to be telling you.